Hi everybody, I am glad I can host our longtime friend Peter Brabec from IBM, and today we will be talking about integrations. Peter is helping organizations solve their integration problems all over Europe, Middle East and Africa by supporting local teams through the whole implementation lifecycle. So Peter, welcome to the show, and it's great to talk to you.
Hello Ivan, hello everybody. So it's really nice to have the opportunity to talk about our hot topic. As Ivan said, yes, coming from IBM, covering the integration portfolio, meeting a lot of customers, supporting business partners. So I have quite an experience all over the world and all over Europe, Middle East, Africa. And I want to help you to improve everything about integration. And that's why we do the podcast. So happy to do that. Looking forward to have fun together.
This is such an interesting topic always, and I love to talk about this. And the reason we are talking about integrations today is that customer expectations and the way we do business have fundamentally changed. And this has profoundly influenced the way we also design and deliver software. So we at Kroz, as a software development consultancy, see this firsthand. And one area that is heavily influenced but not talked that much about is the area of software integrations. And Peter, how do you see this change? It seems like everything has somehow gotten much faster than before.
Yeah, so when we look about integration, and this has a lot of influence, yeah, and as you said, yeah, so the changing in the business, how we do change is really different today, yeah. So it's you had a siloed approach, yeah, and a silo application on a mainframe. You have a silo application on a distributed power machine, or even on a Windows machine. But now with the distribution of different workloads, different functionalities across different clouds, yeah, we are not talking about having one silo which does everything. We have not talk about a database is included into the application. We are talking that you have a service, a database as a service, as a software SaaS service, which is located maybe in Azure Cloud. Yeah, then you have something which is your application logic, which is still on-premise, or the other way around. Yeah, then you have something what you need, for instance, a map service from Google, which is also a SaaS service, and which has a lot of different ways to include it, yeah, so that you attach it via an API, that you attach it via Kafka. So we have so many different protocols. We are moving away from a pure transactional deployment into a streaming deployment. So it means that with all of these different microservices have splitting and around different clouds in your own data center, you need to do something different. You need to develop the application different. And this is a completely separate topic about how to develop applications. But what you need is an integration between of these microservices. You need a way to really move into this cloud native application where you can deploy your container, where you can deploy your piece of code in the same way across Azure, across your own data center, across Google Cloud, across IBM Cloud. This means that when you are talking about, you talk about a fundamental application change, but you're also talking about a fundamental architectural change. And in order to drive this change, you need to integrate these pieces.
So, in a nutshell, we need to deliver faster. We need to deliver in smaller increments using new architectures that support real-time scenarios. So, There is a lot to unpack here, but it seems that all these aspects are somehow intertwined. Let's start with delivering faster. So what does it mean to deliver faster, and what can we do to deliver faster?
Yeah, deliver faster has, as I said in first question, yeah, so it has many impacts. Yeah, deliver faster means that you have a good architecture in place. So means sitting down with your architects, with your developers, with your operational people, and say what is best for the company, what is best for my business. So this means when you're looking at redeveloping or transforming into a digital area and transforming your applications, you need to find the right chunks of information and functionality to deploy it, to develop it. So if they are too big, the support, the development will take too long. If they are too small, the functionalities, you have cut them too small. This means that you need to develop a lot of small services, and then you have really to deploy and connect them, that you have a lot of latency. So this is the first thing, successful planning, replanning of your digital transformation. So we are offering here a lot of services, a lot of consulting, that you find the right granularity. The second, to deploy faster, is really what is the architecture beyond it. So when you have a container-based architecture and moving to a container-based architecture, it is important that you can run the same container technology everywhere. So means we have now standardized basically everything on Kubernetes services, but there are, as in former times with Linux, so different flavors of Kubernetes, which have their benefits, disadvantages. But an important view is the container environment must run everywhere. So because when you want to deploy faster, you want to have the same operational model everywhere, because otherwise you will to change your functionalities according to this special container environment. So this means when you, for instance, look at Red Hat OpenShift, you can run this in Azure, you can run this on-premise, you can run this in Google, you can run this in IBM Cloud, you can run this in Amazon as a service. So you can just deploy the same deployment model everywhere, the operational deployment model. The developers can develop the same way. They have the same interaction, they have the same functionalities, they have the same architecture. So these are one of the two important things to deliver your applications, your functional digital transformation faster. And then what's also important is that you have standardized interfaces. So, and this is where the integration part comes in. So when you integrate, for instance, all on open API definitions, yeah, or Swagger, yeah, and you know what are the parameters, the input parameters, what is the result, what is my centralized repository. So it's also to have a centralized repository of your APIs, that you have the different disciplines of your integration patterns in one place, because one is still transactional using MQ, the other one is using an API, the third one is using a Kafka, but still they are interacting between each other. They have a workflow, so you have to have an integration workflow engine. You have to have a central repository. You have to have a central security enforcement point. So these are the important things to deliver faster, but also, and that's also in this distributed environment, to deliver more secure. Because when you have a central policy enforcement point which connects to your different LDAPs, to your Microsoft Active Directory, and you are using a central policy enforcement point like an API gateway, and you have a central API repository, yeah, like API Connect or Cloud Pak for integration has, that it means that you have one point where you can look at it, that you can reuse the assets, that you have one repository where you see what is the input parameter, what are the required security credentials, what are the return codes, how can I interpret the return codes. And when you are developing this and you consider this and you are checking in your assets in such a central repository, and then you are deploying it in different clouds with the same quality, with the same operational model, with the same security model, you will reduce the development time of your application. Because you have standardized it. You will reduce the latency time of the application because you're using a high-speed policy enforcement point. And as a third, you will improve your security and in parallel improve your quality, so-called quality of service, because now you can have one end-to-end monitoring where you can really see, okay, what is the impact of the different microservices to my overall application chain.
You described nicely the modern integration platforms, but I think that the problem that most organizations today have with traditional integration platforms is that they are a bit bulky for every team to have this expertise and to have this access to the platform. And to summarize some of the main characteristics of modern integration platforms would then be ability to run in distributed environment, being cloud native, where, for example, Kubernetes is a natural runtime environment. They should also be more lightweight, right, than the traditional integration platforms.
Yes, you are absolutely right, Ivan. Yeah, so what I explained before is the ideal state. Yeah, so and everybody wants to have everything in one place and everything. But as you said, yeah, so absolutely correctly said, today we are implementing such new transformation architectures which should serve the new paradigm of IT. We are delivering that, deploying it in an existing environment. And so there are two aspects of that. Yeah, as you correctly said, when we are transitioning from the current environment to a new environment, we have to consider what is the impact, because you can't just stop your IT, build a new one, and then reroute everything. This is not what we are doing. IT is evolving. IT means work with the current, be downward compatible, and the business must run. Yeah, this is the most important thing, that you are not changing anything because you want to change, because you want to improve the business. And here is what you also said. Yes, we have to look into what we have, into this bulky system, find the weak points and start with the weak points, and then improve from this baseline. So for some, it's the weak point that they have different entry points. The other one have omni-channel approaches. Yeah, so they want to have the same look and feel everywhere, on a mobile, on a kiosk, so there are different entry points for starting such a journal. But what is essential is that you are starting with the approach and having in mind, what is my ideal state? So in the ideal state means that you have a lightweight, distributed, cloud native, Kubernetes ready environment in place at the end. And then you are making a gap analysis. And gap analysis means, okay, where are we strong? Yeah, so MQ, transactional, this works. Maybe this is not what we need for today. What are my business assets? This is also an important thing to know, and to work with your line of business, to work with your marketing. What is the thing you want to expose internally, or business to consumer, or business to business. So it's not only about integration capabilities and about the technical thing, it's also about your organizational approach and about your business approach. That's why when you are thinking about such a transition and looking at your gap analysis, it is really important that you work together with the sponsor, with the requester in your company, that you at the end of the day achieve exactly what you describe: a lightweight platform which is cloud native, can run everywhere, which is container ready, which can run also distributed, which is not a silo again in itself, and which supports familiar programming language models that you don't have difficulties to find people who support you. Because in our times, we also see that it's really also about these grown environments need a lot of knowledge. They are using a lot of support knowledge. They need a lot of efforts in kinds of personal power that you that you maintain them, that you improve them. And that's why you have to shift the focus from maintaining existing into a new modern integration platform.
Yeah. And I think that it's really super important what you said about paying attention to the business goals and being in close collaboration with your business peers in the organization, since customers are changing and they are expecting seamless integration of digital services to their everyday life. And they are expecting help exactly in the moment that they need it. And the whole paradigm of digital services is in a way shifting to a real-time interaction, and new system architectures need to support this. So we need to be aware of why we are doing this, what are the end business goals. And that's why super important what you said about paying close attention to what our business goals really are and why are we doing all of this.
Mm-hmm.
And
Exactly.
This all sounds great, but from our personal experience, but also from experience of other people, I know that moving from a monolith, bulky, traditional platform to a more distributed one makes everything exponentially more complex. So how do we deal with those traditional concerns, such as monitoring the system and testing it and debugging new features, now that everything is distributed in this new modern integration platform?
Yeah, again, Ivan, yeah, so when I listen you it seems that you are coming from the real world, yeah, so because you spotted the problems immediately. So having such an environment in place is really everybody's dream, yeah, so, and everybody says, and when you're running out and say, yes, that's what I want, but when I then look at the downside of it, yeah, so it's the problem comes with maintaining it. The problem comes with the latency. The problem comes with how can I really have a holistic view of my environment.
Yeah.
And yes, this is what we also have to address. Yeah, integration as such means that you have these distributed microservices, that you have a containerized environment, that you have a focal point for policy enforcement, which is on the cloud, and the policy enforcement point, like data power, as I said, should be very close to the real application and to the data. But this means distributed environment. This means hybrid cloud. And now when we look at it, and then we have to build an accompanying task, yeah, in our company, which says, okay, when we do such a digital transformation, we also have to change our operational model, our IT operation model. And this is exactly when that comes in with distributed monitoring. when it comes in with tools like Instana, with tools like Turbonomic, yeah, where we can build a repository of our application, where the tool itself identifies the application flow. So we can, I don't want to give here product demonstration, but if you are looking in Instana, and if you're looking at in Turbonomic, you will identify by just deploying these tools, they will crawl through your metadata of your application and will give you a visualization of your environment. And to visualize what you have built is the first step to understand it. So it means that we are now moving from a simple monitoring where you see CPU is high and memory is low and the disk is overloaded, that you see a holistic view of your application and say, okay, what does it mean if the CPU is high, if the disk is overloaded, if the memory is too low? Which impact is it on my application? Which is the impact of on the resources? So it means that we are now moving from a simple monitoring into so-called observability. And observability means that you are not just monitor some agents and some thresholds, that you observe your application and the impact of a threshold to an application. And then we look at this application performance monitoring. We can go even further, and that's when Turbonomic comes in, that we do application resource management. Because when you then look at it and then you see, okay, my Kubernetes server in my data center has 8 CPUs and it runs well. And my application in my Amazon, this has 8 CPUs, but it's only 20% used. Yeah, so that you mean that you see, okay, this 20% used, you immediately can stop the additional CPUs. So that you say, okay, this integration of this application is one thing. What is the latency in between? Which impact has it? But when you are then looking at the different resources, then you also can say, okay, this is important, because if I'm reducing this from 8 to 2, I have two things. I have immediately an impact on my performance, because the performance will not reduce, because I only need 2. You then can say, okay, I'm over provisioning with 4. Yeah, so as we all know, yeah, everybody wants to be on the safe side, and instead of 2, give it 4. But why 8? Yeah, so even 100% more is enough. Yeah, but it also has an impact on your cost, because if you are reducing your CPUs, which are paid most of the time hourly in your cloud, and you reduce it, you first of all save the licenses cost, because you only need 2, but you also save the infrastructure cost. And this means that by applying such an integration architecture, by transforming from a traditional silo to a more advanced containerized microservice architecture, you will be faster, more secure, but you also can save cost if you have the right tools for performance management, resource management, observability in place.
Yeah. Yeah, and what we are noticing right now is also that strange things start to happen. Like, for example, in organizations that are still not in public cloud and do not enjoy that elasticity of public cloud, they are now hitting the physical limitations of their data centers. So it's not anymore, you don't need 8 CPUs, but 4, not because of a cost, but it's because of a physical limitations. They simply don't have any more space in their racks to put more CPU power. And money cannot help you there short term. You need to optimize stuff in the short term. Yeah.
Yeah, this is also, so you made the right observations. Yeah, everybody says, yes, everything okay, just put additional CPU in it, but then they identify, okay, not possible. Yeah. Or if you want to cover peaks, yeah, if you say, I want to cover peaks, and you don't want to have for every peak, you want to have the correct CPU. So that means that with such a concept of content of microservices, of integrating different functionalities, it also means at the end of the day that you are more flexible, you are more, the modern word, agile, yeah. And agile, such an integration architecture gives you agile utility. So, and that's also an important point when rethinking the digital environment, when rethinking how you are actually doing it, how you want to do it, how you want to do it in the future.
Yeah. And we mentioned a couple of times the importance of supporting real-time scenarios these days. So how do you see that modern integration platforms today are doing that? How are they supporting these real-time scenarios and implementations?
Yeah, also an evolution here. Yeah, so evolution means that in former times we had green screens on a mainframe, and then you were directly connected and get it an answer, put it something in. Then we moved to a transactional, to a batch processing, yeah, that you send files with file transfer. The file transfer then was taken, the file was taken by some computer, and the computer then on mainframe, they loaded something, or the Windows server, FTP server loaded something. So it means that you still had kind of interaction, yeah, offline interaction, online interaction, but it always was kind of a request and response, or it was a time-driven, like in batch file transfers, that it was a time-driven interaction. But it always needed something when you said, okay, I send you something, you are working on it, you are computing it, you make your processes, and then I get the result. But in today's way, then we were moved to APIs. Yeah, so when we moved to APIs, it was a little bit more agile already. So that you say, okay, I'm calling an API which sits anywhere. So you are just calling a URL. You don't know an IP address. Yeah, when you say, okay, I need to have an FTP server, or I need an application which I'm connecting to. So you're calling an API, still transaction based, yeah, so request response, but you can get a timeout. Yeah, so it means, okay, I'm calling something, I don't get a request, I send my request, I don't get a response, I have a timeout, maybe I try it later. So, and then we moved to asynchronous, more and more to asynchronous, that you say, okay, fire and forget. Yeah, so an asynchronous API. So this, as you see, we are evolving from simple always on to a model where you say, okay, I don't care about whether I'm online at the moment. I'm really looking into delivering my information, getting my response. That's not always for every model, it's possible, but at the end of the day, for some of the models, that can be the right approach. And then we have evolved even further, that you don't send a request, yeah, so polling and request and say, okay, server is available, okay, I get my response. That you say, okay, I'm connecting and looking at the streaming architecture. So I say I'm interested in the transactions on my bank account. I'm interested in the flight schedule because I'm flying on to Zagreb, at 9 o'clock in the morning, and I'm looking whether the plane is late or not. So I can have this in two models. I can ask every 10 minutes, is the plane late or not? This is one possibility. The other possibility is that I'm connecting to such a source and have a streaming model. So then we are immediately in such a Kafka environment, in an event-driven architecture. So, and this is now, as you see, we are moving from always on to an event-driven architecture where I'm getting basically the push information based on something I'm only interested in. So, and these are scenarios which need to be supported by the integration platform. So that you say, okay, I want to have an integration platform which covers all of these different possibilities, which covers all of the different ways and methods of communicating. Because when you have one common platform, as I said before, you can have easier operation, you can have easier end-to-end monitoring, and you can establish easier security because you have one enforcement point, one enforcement platform. So, and that's why asynchronous messages, event-driven architectures, Kafka, APIs, MQ-based transactions, so, or file transfer and high-speed file transfer, it's important to cover that in one simple platform, because then when you change a user and say, okay, this user can do everything, but then I see, okay, he is misbehaving, I'm removing the user, that you can be sure if he connects to one focal integration platform, you can be sure all of these connections are cut. And this is also one of the important things in such an integration real-time scenario.
Yeah. And it only proves how different this development and deployment paradigm really is. And we touched only on the platform part of the system, and we didn't go into architecture. And we didn't even mention things like event sourcing and other concepts, which make the whole picture even more complex. But we won't go there today because it will take us at least one more episode to cover all of that. But what are some common pitfalls that you see at organizations moving to modern integrations?
Pitfalls is technically, yeah. So when we look at technical pitfalls, then as I said before, that you say, okay, I need this functionality and this simple functionality. I make an RFP, I make a tender, I test it, I implement it, okay. Then you need the next thing. Then you say, okay, same process again. Yeah. So one of the real issues or pitfalls I see in the market is that there is no real strategy, no real planning behind it, that you're still covering point problems. So that integration is a journey, digital transformation is a journey. You need to define the goal, and you need what are the organizational and technical impacts to reach this goal. And one of the common pitfalls is that the users are not thinking in advance, that they don't think in organizational changes, they think just technical changes. Yeah. Because I've seen that one of the largest retailers in the world is, they made their silo, because one was responsible for online, the other one was responsible for the retail supermarkets, the third one was responsible for the mobile app. And everybody had their own siloed system. And then they said, okay, we make one integration, yeah. And then they thought, okay, what does one integration mean in the end? It also not only means that you're selecting one common integration platform, which supports all of the different patterns. It also means that you need organizational changes, that you need something in your company which integrates and which does integration. Because if you talk about integration, it means that you deliver something which integrates different methodologies, different clouds, different networks, different ways of developing. It really means integrating something, as the word says. But then when you have still organizational silos in your company, you can't integrate because you don't have an integration team. And this is really one of the major inhibitors to drive digital transformation, is that the organizations don't adopt their technical journey with and don't align it with their organizational journey internally. Yeah. Because when you now then pick from every team in your company and say, okay, they are doing mobile, they are doing retail shops, they are doing web browsers, they are doing databases, they are doing this. Everybody has a common aspects of how to integrate. And if you just pick from every team the most important, and everybody knows, yeah, on an informal basis in your company, who are the people who drive this, who drive integration, and then you build internally an organizational integration team which takes care of integration, which is the common point of go-to point in your organization when you say, I need something, I need a new methodology because I want to move into a streaming pattern. I need to move from MQ transactional pattern to API. What is the best way? And then you have one common team in your company, an organizational team, an integrated team which takes care of integration. Then you will be successful. And what I mean is, align your digital transformation with your organizational changes. So change your organization to what you want to achieve and to what you really want to gain in the end. And this means build an integration team, build integration budgets, because such an integration platform needs also one common budget to cover all of these patterns, to keep pace, as I said, with the new methodologies, so that you don't have to start everything from scratch with a new RFP. So these are the pitfalls, what I see really, that organizations always look at the technical things, but very, very seldom look at the organizational impacts, look at the monetary impacts, because you also can save money instead of building servers and silos of integration, that you are building one common integration platform. And you also can then tell, okay, I'm improving my security, because also in banking, for instance, here with PSD2, that you can prove I have one focal point where I can control who has access. It's also really about security, impacts, and these are the organizational changes where many companies, almost all I see, not consider really when they are moving into a modern integration platform.
Peter, thank you so much for this conversation. I think you gave us a lot to think about and a lot of good tips, especially this last part with pitfalls and suggestions for organizations that are just starting their journey to modern integrations. I hope we will continue this conversation in real life once over beer. So
yes, that would be nice. I drink, I like the wine, yeah, so also not only beer, yeah, so.
Duly noted.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ivan. It was my pleasure to talk to everybody and hope it was useful and looking forward to hear each other.
Definitely was.